사실 좀 더 좋은 대진을 바랬지만 좀 저희 팀한테는 가장 안 좋은 대진문인 것 같아요.
저희가 RNG를 뽑았을 때 사실 가장 원하던 팀은 아니었는데 그냥 RNG구나. 재밌겠다.
And SKT will clean up what kills they can and secure #1 in their group.
RNG looking for more. That's a triple kill. That's a shutdown as MLXG picks it up.
저희가 8강은 그냥 당연히 진출해야 된다고 생각하고 와서 그냥 이제부터 시작이라고 생각합니다.
뭐 만약에 SK를 이긴다면 우승했다라고 봐야죠. 뭐 그리고 자신감도 하늘을 찔 것 같아요.
That's a double kill for Uzi. Double lift in trouble. Triple kill for Uzi.
Baker looking to go in. Huge three-man stun, but SKT, a beautifully orchestrated play.
Royal never give up. Look to set their sights on the Nexus. Royal advance to Chicago.
And SKT clean up what kills they can and secure #1 in their group.
Hello and welcome to the historic Chicago Theater, where quarterfinal action continues here at the 2016 League of Legends World Championship. Tonight, two-time champions SK Telecom T1 continue their title defense against Royal Never Give Up. And of course, you can see that we have packed this theater full of praised fans who are looking for a competitive series between these two top squads. Now, earlier this afternoon, SK Telecom made their way inside. They'll be on stage shortly to continue defending their title, and you can see Royal Never Give Up here also making their arrival with their semifinal hopes on the line. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm James Dash Patterson alongside Mitch Krepo-Vorspels, Chris Papa Smithy Smith, and Joshua Jat Leesman. Gentlemen, a dominating 3-0 performance out of Samsung Galaxy last night, but we have returned again, hoping for more than 3.
Yes, Samsung thought to get rid of all the U.S. teams of Worlds. At least they haven't gotten rid of all the U.S. casters.
That's
which I'm
right.
happy about.
And
so
a representation going strong
going
here.
on.
We're trying.
or doing the best we absolutely can. All right, well, along with our casting team, there are a plethora of international broadcasters helping us bring Worlds to a truly global audience in over 15 languages. You're getting a look at our partners from the League of Legends Continental League, and then, of course, Brazil's CB LOL and the Korean team from OGN. Before we get into anything else, though, it's time to send it down to the stage to introduce the quarterfinalists doing battle here tonight.
Thank you very much, Dash. Tonight, one of our quarterfinalists will claim their spot in New York City. Please join me in welcoming from China's LPL, Royal Never Give Up. In the top lane, Looper. Jungling, MLXG. In the mid lane, Xiaohu. At AD carry, Uzi. Supporting, Mata. Their sub at AD carry, Whoosh. And the LPL's Royal Never Give Up, Coach Fly. Ladies and gentlemen, Royal Never Give Up. Now, let's meet their opponents for tonight's quarterfinals. From Korea's LCK, the reigning world champions, SK Telecom T1. In the top lane, Duke. In the jungle, Bengi. At mid lane, Faker. At AD carry, Bang. At support, Wolf. Their sub at the jungle position, Blank. And the coach for SK Telecom T1, Coma. Ladies and gentlemen, SK Telecom T1.
So much top-tier talent on one stage there. It's honestly sad to think that we're going to be saying goodbye to one of these teams by the end of the evening, but that's the way it has to be.
Yeah, two things there. One, it must suck walking up next to Faker, because he's always going to get a louder cheer than you. And I love that the crowd was at least cheering for both teams.
Yeah, and you really realize during the introductions there how many of the best League of Legends players we've ever seen are going to be playing against each other today.
It's a really hype matchup. At the end of the day, this is a rematch of the MSI semi-final as well. A lot of history between these players, a lot of World Finals appearances at least as well. So a lot to be excited for.
And of course, this is following our first quarterfinal that happened yesterday, where Samsung Galaxy took their next step towards the Summoners Cup, defeating Cloud9 and qualifying for the semifinals in New York City.
Yeah, and we had questions about Samsung all year really, whether they're going to make it to Worlds, whether they could perform in their group, whether or not they could deal with being favorites instead of underdogs. Resoundingly, they've answered every single one of those questions because yesterday was dominant.
Yes. I mean, you looked at the research, right? You looked at, okay, this is the reason why Samsung should be in control of this match, but you never knew. There's such a small sample size, especially with Core JJ, that things can always go different under the lights in the quarterfinals here in Chicago, but it was Samsung very much getting over whatever kind of mental games there were and putting Cloud9 away.
Yeah, and just superb consistency from Samsung yesterday. The way they could close out games, it felt like they were never under pressure when they were playing. No erratic decisions, take it calm and collected. They didn't fall far behind in the early game, especially game 2, that one team fight that won it all with the cannon flank. It just showed that they were just a single level above Cloud9.
And in specific, we've got to talk about Kuve in that top lane, because we had some question marks around him, and looking at Impact as one of the top performers for C9, and Kuve dealt with it phenomenally.
That guy just was so fun to watch. The way he stopped teleports, he already showed that he could perform on mages, you know, on the cannon rumble, the echo, but then he whipped out the poppy and he was stopping teleports left and right, flash-eing people into walls. Super satisfying to watch.
Exactly, one of the best performances we've seen from him, but also we talk so much about Crown on the Samsung team. Yesterday we saw so many other individuals shine. Core JJ's support was incredibly clutch in so many situations. Even their AD carry was so successful. Why am I blanking on the name all the second? Ruler was so dominant in that Caitlyn game where he was able to flash into the end of some of those team fights. Everyone on Samsung stepped up.
Even in lane, like Ruler was consistently walking up. Once he saw the skill shot kind of go left or behind him, he was like, I'm just going to walk in your face and trade. And these guys were known as playing a sustained bot lane, not the best players, but they really outperformed.
All right, well, that's all behind us, though. Now it's time to turn to tonight's series. Royals support Mata claimed that his club could take down the defending champs if they had Uzi. Well, gentlemen, now they do.
They do have Uzi. He also said that many months ago when the rest of his team was playing very well. And since then, World Never Give Up has shown some inconsistencies. Yes, Uzi has looked good with Matcha in some situations, but Xiaohu, MLXG, Looper aren't playing at the level they necessarily were in the spring, and it doesn't seem like they've been able to put it all together.
Yeah, and that's obviously because they replaced Whoosh with Uzi, but that changed an entirely different, it makes a dynamic different in the team. You know, when you have such a player like Uzi who requires a lot of resources, then can put out a lot of damage, it means there's less resources going to mid and potentially jungle, and I think that is a change that RNG still is struggling with.
I mean, the gold has to come from somewhere, right? It has to be taken away. You can't just add more gold. It's a percentage. He takes that big percentage of the team's gold, but one person who can actually hold their head high, especially for the big win that kind of defined Royal Never Give Up's tournament, that first win over TSM, is Mata. His playmaking in that first game, especially on the Alistair, you know, in a kind of a difficult spot. Last picked Alistair, not a great laning choice, took over the game though, and was the big reason they came up trumps over TSM.
And it also is interesting though, because Mata played Alistair one game in the group stage. He also had multiple Nami games, and he's trying to win in a variety of ways. And I think RNG as a whole, even though they have played around Uzi, need to kind of find their game if they want to do well against SKT here, and figure out how they can more play around Xiaohu and MLXG, like they did in these TSM games when they were able to kind of keep Bjergsen's laning phase from roaming to the rest of the map.
And that's actually what made me a little bit of an RNG fanboy back in early spring, middle of spring, because they had this jungle mid laner synergy that was so satisfying to watch. They made kills where I couldn't even see the possibility of it being there with MLXG and Xiaohu, and right now they have tournament-defining players in a Mata and in an Uzi, but I feel they kind of put the crux of what RNG was in the shadows with that jungle support synergy.
I mean, ironically, it was the jungle support synergy that got them over the line over TSM in that second match that basically qualified them for this stage. Specifically, it was the Aurelion Soul roaming around with MLXG's support, making plays, getting that triple kill for Uzi, and they looked in control from there.
Yeah, and we always talk about RNG's ceiling and how good they could be, but it doesn't really matter how high your ceiling is if you can never reach it. If you don't have a ladder to actually get up there and paint, it's just going to be this ugly, decaying ceiling all the time. And they haven't been able to reach that ceiling because ever since Uzi came to that team, it's been few and far between the games where they can actually have their lanes win and have the strong AD carry in team fights.
And while we talk about the inconsistency and some of the struggles of RNG, let's go ahead and contrast that with SK Telecom, because here they have walked into this tournament, maybe not the favorites to begin with, but are much more looking like that as the tournament's gone on.
I mean, the 3-0 lets you know, especially in week 2, SKT hit high gear. They're also playing styles that aren't necessarily Sin around the tournament. They're going for these Jace top. They're very happy to blind pick Jace on blue, go with no tank, avoid any of those big engages like we saw Cloud9 fall to yesterday with the Kennen flank, for example. They're taking a risk. It's a comp that no one else is pulling out, and it's a comp that SKT is playing uniquely well.
And that's SKT for you. They have the best season spacing out of all these teams. You know, ramping it up straight at Worlds, you know, dropping a few games, intentionally not winning the finals. You know, it's all a ruse to just perform at Worlds. Now, I think they're great. I think they definitely stepped up week 2. I was impressed by Wolf. His ability to zone people out in fights with that Zyra 2 was just so satisfying to watch. SKT much better in week 2.
And for me, SKT, while they have played with a variety of styles, are the best disengaged team in the world. You consistently see them play with somewhat squishy team compositions, unlike this one where they have Faker on a hard initiator, but they are able to win fights even when they don't seem like they have a composition that is set to go in team fight, because they play with so much discipline and so much patience. When they do need to disengage, everyone is always on the same page, and it's rare you see someone on SKT get caught out of position and mess up one of their plays.
I mean, to me, the deadliest thing about SKT is that there was definitely Season 3 Worlds. There were champions from that they were the favorite for the tournament. Last year, definitely the favorite for the tournament. This year, very few people pre-tournament were predicting them to be the favorite. And that's why they've had a little bit less spotlight. People are looking to the Rocks Tigers who maybe tripped up in the spotlight. You know, calmly in the shade, SKT's built. And now, I think a lot of analysts, come the quarterfinals, have SKT as the strongest team in the tournament.
Yeah, they're definitely with a very large chance to win. I think they were probably second or third in a lot of people's rankings. But Krepo, I want to go back to the point you made earlier where you say they had the season spacing in jest. But we play really long seasons in esports, especially for the best teams. Someone like Faker is in a competitive tournament almost every month of the year. So the fact that they have peaks and valleys is expected, and they're very good about making sure they're peaking at exactly the right time, taking a break right after they got eliminated in the LCK summer split, and then ramping up through the splits and through the tournaments. They always seem to end stronger than they start.
And that ties into, for me, their biggest strengths in international tournaments. It's their week-to-week preparation. They have looked weak at points into international tournaments, especially MSI week 1. Everyone's like, is it over for SKT? Then they go back to the drawing board. They have to prep for way fewer opponents, put everything on a single match, and they come prepared. They are ready for every single pick ban scenario. Yes, they have innate weaknesses in a team. Every team at Worlds has them, but they seem to be very aware of them and play around them very well.
I mean, the only unique thing this time is that SKT lost their last regular season game against Longzhu. Looked a shadow of their former selves. Very disappointing performance. They only played one best of 5 in the postseason. Lost to KT Rolster, obviously. A big upset there. So it wasn't the same story where they were starting to ramp up right at the end. This was the first time where you're like, I don't know where SKT's at. I don't know where their jungle's at. I don't know where a lot of SKT's at. And they've answered those questions preliminarily, but the best of 5 stage is where those questions get answered for real.
Yeah, and if we're still talking about pre-tournament expectations, the big weakness that people were trying to pinpoint for SKT was in that jungle slot. Hey, we're juggling 2 different guys. Blank, how's he going to perform on that world stage versus, you know, Bangi just subbing in? And is that kind of switching of synergies going to cause any issues? I don't know if it has so much yet, but what are your thoughts on that one, Jet?
I think when you have lanes as strong as Faker and Duke, the jungler doesn't necessarily need to excel. And I definitely do feel like if you're going to try and find a weakness in SKT, it's going to be in the jungle position. It hasn't actually knocked them out of the tournament. If it does, though, like if these guys do lose in the tournament, I think a lot of the blame will fall on the junglers because it is one of their weakest positions.
It's not an enviable position to be in. When SKT rebuilt in 2015 and when the sister teams ended, strong top laner, Marin, strong mid laner, Faker, both carry-minded. Bang and Wolf, they play a bit more defensive. That's their role in the team. Basically, you can't have a carry everywhere. If you plug in Rush, if you plug in a really aggressive jungler, the flow kind of falls away. That's been that kind of the history back when OMG tried to plug Uzi into more carries. So they need a supportive jungler. It's not the sort of thing that will get you the spotlight. It'll certainly get you the hate when they lose, but it's a necessary part, and they need to ward for these big solo laners.
Yeah, obviously, there's still degradation. How well can they play the support role? There are questions there that can be asked. However, if you look at the competition in the jungle role within the tournament, we saw a lot of top-tier jungle talent here at Worlds, but for me, very few have stood out as, honestly, beyond what the expectations were, and some actually have underperformed. If you look at this matchup in particular, I don't think Bengi or Blank will have too much issues with MLXG in his current form.
That's what I was about to go towards. Is we've looked at both of these teams now in separate microscopes. Let's pair them against each other in some of our analysis. Would you say that that jungle mid matchup is primarily how this best of series is going to hinge?
So it's really tricky for RNG of saying, how would you take down SKT? Because RNG, when you think of how they're going to win, you think they're going to win individual matchups. They have Uzi. I ranked Bang as a better AD carry than Uzi before Worlds. I don't necessarily think they can win the bottom lane. If there is a place where they could have a mismatch, it's if MLXG ascends from what he did at MSI, gets back to that aggressive, risky, crazy style of jungling, and then can pressure the mid lane because he shut down the jungler. Other than that, I don't see many avenues where RNG get edges.
I mean, if we look at the Flash Rules game for SKT, the one game where they had success, it was constant pressure towards that mid lane from more than just the jungler. We had support roams, we had everything. So, I mean, is that it? Is Faker the key to SKT, or as you mentioned, with the strong lanes that they have on the side, are they able to fall back on those?
I mean, Faker has shown that he can crumble in matchups. It happens rarely, but when he does, he actually falls quite hard, especially in the Aurelion and Sol versus Cassiopeia matchup. Go back to when they played KT in the regional or in the playoffs rather, Fly, put Faker on a 0-4-0, and that can happen. If he tries to keep fighting his way out, it's an unlikely scenario, but for RNG, they're looking at a bunch of unlikely scenarios because they're the underdogs in this matchup.
And just consider the team that RNG went 2-0 over, the most practiced team in TSM is the only team they took out 2-0. This is a mismatch on some levels, but the inventiveness around the mid laner and jungler that was so strong at MSI, if they can channel it like they did in that second game against TSM, there is a world where they can win games.
And while we're taking a holistic view over on Riot Games 2, we're bringing you the player experience stream for an alternate take on the quarterfinal. In Game 1, Atlas, Zyrene, and Alex each bring you an SKT-focused cast revolving around rotations, warding, and vision. Now, throughout the day, the player experience casters will be taking your questions on Twitter to help level up your game. We're almost ready to go, so let's lock in your guys' predictions for this series down the line. Who's booking the next trip to the semifinals? Kreppel, starting with you.
Gonna keep it short. I think SKT is going to take it. I think that Fog of War stream is going to look the exact same way as our stream right here because their vision is good, their play is better, and I'm just making a 3-0.
3-0, that's a big one there. Papa Smithy, what are you thinking?
I'm more optimistic for RNG picking up a game than I was for C9 yesterday, so I think it's going to be 3-1 SKT, but I think RNG can snowball a victory.
All right, Jet, what's your thoughts?
Man, always putting me at the end of the desk here on these one-sided matchups. There's nothing I can do to be surprising. I'm going to go with SKT. I think when they played in the semifinals at MSI, it was 3-1. I think it's likely that we get something similar to that. 3-1, 3-0, either could happen. I'm going to say 3-1.
All right, well, there we have it with the Summoners Cup within reach. SKT remains disciplined.
많은 분들이 저희 팀은 그냥 이기는 팀이다 뭐 이런 식으로 생각하셨을 것 같은데 사실 저희 목표는 생각보다 많이 소박하거든요. 그냥 후회 없는 경기를 하고 싶은 마음이 가장 컸었어요. 그냥 작년부터 올해까지 쭉 이어졌었는데 이기든 지든 그냥 좋은 경기력으로 그냥 팬분들한테 뭐 즐거움을 선사할 수 있다면 그냥 저희가 그것대로 만족할 것 같아요.